Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We will be live at exactly 12 o'clock with Joe Eliza. He is the owner and CTO, which is the Chief Training Officer of the CE Leadership Group. If you're watching right now, we would appreciate if you could share on your timeline, share with friends. It's going to be a great interview. We look forward to seeing you soon. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We will be live in approximately 2 minutes with Joe Eliza, the owner and CTO of the CE Leadership Group. Talk to you soon. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the Latino Pittsburgh Digital Speaker Series with the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Today, we will be interviewing Joe Eliza. He is the owner and CTO of the CE Leadership Group. Joe's going to be discussing entrepreneurship, government contracting, leadership, and his tips for how you can be the most effective version of yourself. Welcome, Joe. Thanks for being here. Oh, Joe, you're muted, and there you go. You should be good now.
There we are. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, we're very happy to have you. Joe is actually a member of our board, and he's very active in the Pittsburgh community. So, Joe, let's jump right in. Why don't you start with your heritage?
Thank you very much. I come from Mexico, basically. I've been here living and doing business in the U.S. Probably for around 10 years. I moved my family here. Some part of my family was born here, my little kids. And we decided to do this family movement after doing some, having a similar business in Mexico and doing some similar stuff that we did in Mexico.
That's awesome. Well, we will get into your whole story later, but we really want to start with where you came from and what your childhood was like. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
I was born and raised basically in Mexico City. That's a tiny little town of 22, 23 million people. It's a large town. It's about 4 or 5 times the size of New York City, the whole metropolitan area. And from there, I was raised in a smaller place, probably a half an hour drive from there, that is called Toluca.
Okay, well, Joe, tell us a little bit. So, I think that when people, Americans specifically, hear that you're from Mexico, they don't picture this big, bustling, modern city. Tell us about what the area was like, especially socioeconomically.
Yes, Mexico City is large. It has, like any large city, it has multiple areas, many places, and being for a city being that large is it's a place that you like. For example, if you can think about New York City with the skyscrapers, streets filled with businesses, places, a lot of places to eat, a lot of offices, a lot of activity, a lot of economical activity. That is Mexico City. There is economical activity all over the place. Of course, there are some areas that they are a lot more cosmopolitan, so to say. You can see people from all over the world doing some kind of business there. There are small, medium, large multinational companies. It's a big place to be.
So, what about ethnic diversity in Mexico City? Can you tell us a little bit about what do people look like? What do people sound like? And do you differentiate like we do here in the US for different groups? Or is everyone just Mexican?
No, it's diversity. It's one of the key things that you would find in Mexico City. If going to your question, what do people looks like? It's very diverse. You would see people from many different ethnicities. You would see people from South America, people from Europe. You could see white. You could see um, uh, more people more like the traditional Latino looking. But it's not that the only that you would see. You would see a large diversity of people. There are whole communities from people like from Italy, for example, communities from Spain. There's a lot of people. There are large groups from Spain that they like doing businesses in Mexico City too. So it's not that you would tell somebody physically that you could tell that they are from that place, because it's a large diversity. There's people from all over the world, and there wouldn't be a way to tell you somebody would kind of look like this. No, that wouldn't happen.
So, why do you think that that happens here in the US then? That when people hear the word or hear Mexican, that they think something totally different?
Well, as with many other things that happened in any country, not only here in the US, we mostly get what it's presented on TV or the traditional means of communication. So in a similar way that in other countries, they would see the American culture in a way that is not like that. That's important to say. The US is not what it is presented to the rest of the world. In that similar way, a lot of people from here would think that people from Mexico would look like, they would work in a specific way, they would dress in a specific way. And that is not true. It's not that we all fit that pattern. That's what we normally see on TV, but it's a large diversity. So there wouldn't be a way to say to be able to tell somebody is from Mexico or from Mexico City by the way they look like.
I love that you compare that to Americans, because I think that people tend to not think of themselves and their own experience when they're looking at the experience of others. So I love that you brought that to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Tell us a little bit. I know you had a kind of different family life than the average person. Your entrepreneurship started at a very early level or a very early age. Can you tell us a little bit about what your mom and dad did?
Well, my father, he's an owner of a clothes manufacturing company. He manufactures clothes and he sells those to different brands in Mexico, and I think some of those brands they get here in the U.S. sold in the U.S. too. And my mother, she was always a very strong entrepreneur. She has had a number of multiple different businesses, but probably one of the best ones that she had is when she was very young. She started building a little complex with rental places. So she owns a small complex, and she basically collects rents. And it's quite a job, but that's a business that you require a lot of long-term vision to be able to see in your mind the project finished and to see something working on that. And that started probably, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago.
Awesome. So entrepreneurship has always been in your life. Did you work at your parents' companies?
Yes, another business adventure that my mother had is a transportation company. That company is still there. It's still up and running. It's operating. And basically what they do is in vans, they bring people in and out of different companies. You know, for example, the first and the second shift are changing, or second to third are changing, they would bring in the people for the coming shift, and they would take the people that ended the shift. They would get them out and bring them to specific locations around the city. That transportation company has been in the family ever since I remember my mother doing that. So that has been there for a number of decades, actually. And when I was 12 years old, I was trained to start driving so I could become one of her drivers.
Wait a minute. When can you drive in Mexico?
As long as they don't get you.
I love it. See, you were such an entrepreneurial spirit. You couldn't even wait, right?
You could even, yeah. But at the age of 14, you can start with a driving permit. So that's what I did. By the time I was 14, I was fully trained in how to drive one of those large vans. So they got me my driving permit, and I was driving for her. And the other thing that I was doing, and I'm very happy to mention that, is that I was working as a mechanic in that company. So when I was not driving, one of the things that I needed to be doing, especially over the weekends, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays, is I was always working on repairing the different units, the different vans, to make sure that during the week they will be okay to be operational. So we were always fixing those. I was with my grandfather. He taught me all that I know about mechanics, and him and we were basically getting together every Saturday morning to work on the cars, to work on the vans, doing all kinds of repairs and stuff.
Okay, so in this role, I know that we always kind of talk about how you had like a different perspective on things and how you always had this different lens that you looked at things through. Like you didn't just do your regular 9 to 5, you were observing and growing. And so what was your view of that time of the general workforce and leadership? And how did that take you forward into your next adventure?
At those stages, maybe one of the main things that I was being trained to do, and maybe not that openly I was being told so, but basically it was to be prepared, to get prepared, because, for example, the third shift, the change at the third shift, which was from 10 p.m. to almost 1 a.m. the next day, that was a 3-hour driving time that you really need to make sure that nothing was going to get in your way of bringing people in and out. So during the day, you needed to be prepared for that. If there was a tire that needed to be fixed, you needed to do that ahead of time. If for whatever reason you kind of thought the car needed to get some revision, you needed to check the oil, whatever you needed to do needed to happen before that, because that time, nothing could get in the way of you accomplishing the goal, which was getting people in and out. At that time, I was 14 years old, and I could have 10 people. I could be driving that van with 10 people that were just about to get to their work. So if something happened, I was going to be an obstacle for them to show up on time to their work. And we couldn't allow that. That was not allowed. You could not fail to them.
So that seems like a kind of a big responsibility for someone at such a young age. How did you feel about that? Was it intimidating or did it feel natural?
I think it was both. At some points, it was intimidating, but at that young age, I had the example of some of the other members of my family. Some of my uncles were working there too. My mother was there too. So I guess you don't really see that overwhelming. What you do at that young age is you just follow the example it's being set up by the other ones, and you just don't question it. You just see them doing it, so you can do it too. At some points, yes, there were a couple of times. There were a couple of times that after leaving the people where they needed to go to their work, I got a flat tire or I got something broke in the car. It was raining and I needed to be out there doing some quick fix so I could get home. Those are the moments that you think, oh, I wish this wouldn't happen. But with the time, you actually realize how transformational that was, because that was a little too strong for something maybe to happen to a kid of that age. But that also was very transformational in the way that you would see the world, and that you can start realizing that the world is not really that perfect, that you needed to do something to make the world work because it's not that perfect.
Yeah, I can see that. And I see that in what you do today as well, which we'll get to later.
Yeah.
But how do you think, so this was like around high school when you had your first job and you were involved in business. How do you think that your childhood was different from other children, and how does that bring you to where you are today?
It was different from this perspective. For example, when you're at that age, you like going out on a Friday night with your friends, right? Going to the movies or just hanging out with your friends. One of the things that I couldn't do was to hang out on Friday night after 9 p.m., for example, because I needed to go to work at 10. So I needed to show up early. While the rest of the guys or the rest of the group, the girls and the guys in the group, they were still hanging out and partying out on a Friday. I needed to go to work. I think that started getting my mindset in a slightly different way, because I needed to go to work, and then I needed to also make sure that next Saturday morning I was in a good shape to go to the work, to show up again 6 a.m. in the morning. That is something slightly different. It's not crazy different, but it's something slightly different to what the rest of my friends could do or they were able to do. And that, I think that what taught me was that I needed to have that sense of responsibility, that accountability ahead of time, to make sure that things were going to work. And that was going to, as long as I was making sure things were going to work, I could always enjoy, relaxing, my time off, just doing nothing on a Saturday night, but I couldn't enjoy that if I knew in my mind that something was not totally okay to show up to work next Monday. How does that translate into what I do now? Let's say I have a client that I need to see Monday morning. I would work. I don't have any issue, any problem working Friday, Saturday. I have had a couple of times that I have to work overnight. I put on my computer some nice music. I get my coffee ready, and I can totally work overnight until the next morning, 6, 7, 8 a.m. I take a shower and I'm ready to roll without having to go to sleep in the whole night. And that is not a burden for me. I don't see that as being a weight. I actually enjoy that. I see that as that's an honor to have the opportunity to work for somebody, and that represents I have things to do for my clients, which is great. That is always a pleasure. And I think that's how it transformed from that young age, that I needed to make sure the cars were operational, to today, to nowadays, that I need to make sure that my projects are operational.
And that's one of the things that I've always noticed about you. You're always really prepared ahead of time. You always have all of your options there for you. Can you talk a little bit about, at this young age, where did you learn that? Was that something that came from you and just these experiences you were having, or is that something that was ingrained in you from, a mentor or parent?
I think it might be a combination of the two. When I was that young, I used to do a lot of work with my grandfather, and he was probably the first person that told me, you need to make sure that nothing will get in your way when you are doing the work to achieve the goal, or whatever we wanted to do at that time. So I think it originally, the planted seed came from him. And then down the road, I found by experience that really was very, very fruitful. It was working with me, because whenever later, a few years later in college, for example, or in school, and then later at work, every time that I felt I was well prepared and that I had put the right amount of time in preparing for something, that particular experience turns out to be positive, successful for both the client and for myself. So coming from that young age, and being the seed that was planted from my grandfather, and again the rest of my family, because it was my grandfather teaching the rest of the family similar things, and just following the example, of the other ones that were ahead of me, and realizing that was really paying. It was fruitful. It was creating results, and that's something that engraved. And I consciously, maybe I never thought about, I really need to be fully prepared. But it's when you're facing those situations, when you're at that moment, you just feel the energy, your mind takes over, and you're just ready to start working and preparing stuff for the project that you're working on.
Sorry, it took a second, and my kids are running in to say hello. Joe, do you have kids?
I do have 3 kids. Say hello to your kids. I like them a lot.
Oh,
Yeah, I do have 3 kids, and they are very nice. They are always also kind of trying to know what daddy is doing. When I get back home, they go like, "Hey, daddy, did you go through your call?" Because now they're so used that I'm telling them, "Hey, I'm gonna have a call."
I love it. Yeah, it's been such a different thing pivoting, and I'm sure you do lots of things like that, or like this. But I want to hop into a little bit. So that was your first job. What was your second job? Or let's go to college first.
Yeah.
Was your family, were they very educated? Were they entrepreneurs? Was education encouraged in your family?
I think I have a diverse family. Some of my relatives, they have worked, they have had solid job positions for many years, but some others, they have been entrepreneurs. On my mother's side of the family, she's probably the one that was the most entrepreneurial, that showed that blood earlier, and it was somehow logic. It was a natural path for me to think that should be the way. Although she always encouraged me to not lose from my side a fixed position, a job position in a company, that was always a good option. But from the example that I had from her and from some other members of my family, it was being an entrepreneur. It was like the natural path for on that side of the family.
Yeah, I can see that. So knowing that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, I think a lot of people pick one or the other, especially early on. Why did you go to college, and what did you go for?
I went to college, basically. I wanted to become an engineer. At that point, I didn't know exactly what type of engineer. And it was by looking at the different options in college that I became an industrial engineer, which was a great experience. It was wonderful. My best friends come from that time. the family that you choose, your best friends, the brothers and sisters that you choose, they come from that time. And it was basically at that time the idea that if I needed and if I wanted to go and join a large company professional wise to go work with them, that was the way to do it. That was a good way of doing that. But that never closed the doors to the other options. And then the idea of becoming an entrepreneur, it's something that I know maybe a lot of people in this interview series have shared something similar with this, but it's not something that you consciously, at least in the beginning, you do not consciously have in your mind, and you are like, I just want to be a business owner with that clarity of mind from the very beginning. It's like a little fire that starts. You could be doing something else. I had a number of years working in the corporate world. I had 10 years working there. But there is that little flame, that little fire that you have inside, and that just keeps growing and growing and growing until one day you just realize this is the opportunity. Let me try this first. And then it becomes the first thing on your list. That project that you always had in mind, for example, for some reason is not okay, 2 years from now, I will be doing this. The opportunities, they just keep coming, and suddenly you realize, okay, this is the opportunity that I was looking for, that I was asking for. Let me try and do this. When I had that opportunity, I always liked to think that if for whatever reason it was not successful, with my engineering and master's degree, I could always go back and work in the corporate world. That was 17, 18 years ago, and I've never really needed to go back to the corporate world from that perspective.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So when you first got out of college, what was your first job out of college?
I used to work for a company where they manufacture electrical cable. And my first job was, when this was a big manufacturing plant. And when clients called that company with complaints, I was in the quality department, customer quality replement. So when the clients called that company for complaints, I was in charge of translating somehow their emotional complaints. When a client calls you and they just dump everything on you, transform that and kind of guide that client, that person, make them kind of cool down a little bit and start talking about what the really technical issues were. So my job was to make that translation from an emotional client complaint call to a technical. At the end, I needed to have a technical sheet with all the different characteristics that they were complaining about. So in the company, deep down in the company, the engineers could have some technical specification to work on to fix those problems.
So I think this really fits into where you started and where you are today, because you're observing, you're communicating, you're analyzing, and you're really looking forward to how you can make things better. Is that an accurate representation?
That is very accurate. Yes, thank you very much for putting it that you have the magic of putting the right words where they fit. Yes.
Thank you.
That is very accurate, because that I continue to do that. It's interesting that you mentioned that came from my very first job, and to this point, I continue to do that. I have to observe. Sometimes I have to talk to clients, and they might be a little bit emotional, and I need to talk them through what I call structured conversations and transform that frustration. My employees don't do what I tell them to do. They always say yes, but at the end, I don't find them doing anything. All kinds of frustrations that come from people.
Yeah.
And talk with them, speak with them to find some more real roots, way beyond just the emotional thing that happens. What could be the real reasons why something is happening or people is behaving in a specific way, and trying to dig deep, looking for that type of reason. So observing, it's very well connected. I'm very intrigued that you made that
all the way through. I think even when we did the pre-interview, we were realizing so many things. It's really, I think this is so ingrained in who you are. So let's hear about your second job. So that first job that you were in, it wasn't your long-term job, and you went to kind of a larger corporation, and I know you managed a big team. Tell us about that and what it was like.
Yeah, after that first job, my second job was in a company where they manufactured parts for cars, rubber made parts. And I started working in that company as a process engineer. Uh, my basic responsibility was to make people follow the different procedures in a process so the product could come out of the manufacturing lines. I was in charge of developing the manufacturing procedures, make sure that those were written okay. Basically, those are recipes like when you're making a cake. So I was in charge of writing the recipe in the best way possible so that the workers could understand and follow it the best way. I was also in charge of getting them trained in how to do that work. That was my first position in that company, and it evolved in 10 years. And the last position that I had in that same company, I was a director of manufacturing in a small manufacturing unit. I was in charge of a team of almost 200 people, including maintenance, quality staff, lab, a workforce of 150 people, a union. They used to have a very nice union, very strong union, and nice from the business perspective too. So I started from that small position of a process engineer to be in charge of a whole manufacturing unit, doing a lot of stuff international wise already at that point.
So you were managing over 150 people. What was that like? Like, what did you bring from your other positions in your childhood into that role? And what advice do you have for people who are managing teams?
I think that what I brought from the earlier stages in my life, I think that what I brought was basically that sense of being as prepared as possible, being as much trying to foresee the different scenarios, what could happen, and trying to be as prepared as possible for that. And another thing that I found myself, it was very important, and this might be that piece of advice that you asked me basically, is that we all, as human beings, we all are so different and we all are so diverse in our previous experience, professional wise. We all have been through a very unique experience that has shaped our mindset and has built in us that different perception of the world. Mm-hmm. My advice, and this is what I think I learned from that time mostly, my advice is that when you're managing, when you're supervising people, you got to take the time to know your people. You got to be aware that you have that diversity in your team, and you're not playing checkers, for example. Not everybody is the same. It's not the same regulation that people will apply equally. It's not the same work instructions. It's not. We all behave differently. So it really makes sense to pay attention to those differences of who we are, how do we work, what's the main traits and priorities that we have as a person, and apply those back at work. If, for example, like me, if I take pride and I consider being prepared, it's quite a value in my work, my supervisors, they could leverage that. They could utilize that trait in me and work with me in a way that I could always show that specific trait. But people has different traits. We all have different ways of seeing the world. If we can be perceived how different we are and get to apply those important differences and traits that we all have, it's going to be so much easier to work with people.
And that's what your company does. You know, that's what you do in these trainings. So all of these things, you brought them forward. So right now we're hearing about how Joe was working for a large corporation. You know, he was managing about 150 people. He was at a point in his career, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, where a lot of people would be comfortable. They would be happy. And you weren't just happy. You decided to pivot and go into entrepreneurship, into business for yourself. Why did you make that decision? Like, where was the line for you?
It was a good opportunity that I was presented with when I was working in the corporate world. One of the things that I needed to make sure was that the training at that point, training to clients and training to vendors, plus the internal training to the workers in the company, I was in charge of all of that in different manufacturing techniques and manufacturing tools that needed to be applied at that moment. And I was in charge of doing that training too. So I got presented with the opportunity to do that independently. I was able to start doing some training for other people outside the company and to do that in an independent way. So that was the moment that I think it changed, and basically it told me, hey Joe, here's the opportunity. Here's what you need to start doing right now. It was very important to me at that time that most of the people, I'm always interested in the feedback. Every time I do my training, I always ask people, is it something useful for you, something that you can start applying right now, something that is going to be valuable to you? And I'm always interested in whatever they have to say. Not necessarily I want to hear, yes, this is great. I also want to hear when it's something that is not going to help them, because I want to change that. I need to change in a way that I can create something useful for people. So I was always asking that question whenever I was doing training. And the vast majority of times, people liked the way I was explaining things to them. People always liked the way how I was asking them questions to change their perspective of seeing something, a particular situation, so they could understand it differently and apply the learning in the workplace. I thought that at that moment, I thought that was very important. And getting out of the corporate world and start working independently, I was going to bring that trait with me, because it was basically at that time, it was me physically doing the training. So of course that trait was going to come with me, and I was still going to have that people and that social capital, so to say, to keep doing my trainings, which is exactly what happened.
So I want to talk about capital a little bit. When you started your business, did you have startup costs? Where did you get the money? What capital did you need at that time?
This is a great question. Economical capital was not really that high. What I needed, I had some savings that I already had. I already had worked for a number of years in the corporate world, so I had my share of savings, and I already had started, for example, building a small place that later in time that became my first office for the business. So I already had something to start working with, some economical capital. But what I really was thinking, what I thought was really much more important than economical capital was the social capital that I really needed to gain traction on the business. Because even if you have all the social capital, at the end you need to go out there and talk to somebody. You need to speak with them and lay down the groundwork of a project and get them in harmony, get them in tune with you to work together in that project. So there is always somebody else that you will be working with. That social capital out there was the most important thing and was the most important investment that I needed to do at that time. And that continues to happen. That never ends. You need to continually increase your social capital to all directions. So more than the economical capital, it was that social capital that I really wasn't paying attention to.
I love that perspective. It's so unique because so many times when people are going to start a business, the hurdle that they have is financial. So I love the different perspective of, first of all, that's not all you need. Of course, more money helps. But at the end of the day, social capital can be just as powerful, which is something that is a huge part of, I think, both of our stories.
Sure.
But Joe, you were able to find a lot of success with your business in Mexico. I know that, you were doing a lot of contracts, big contracts, making really decent money, doing speaker engagements. So why did you decide to go from Mexico to the US?
Oh, wow. That's a very good question. Yes, we had a very good amount of success in Mexico. At that point, we were making projects for independent companies. we were having a lot of projects for the Mexican government, for other entities, for universities, for example. We had a lot of projects that we did. Universities used to call us to subcontract projects. Companies, automotive companies, manufacturing companies, they were always calling us to do trainings. In that case, it was more for the manufacturing tools, the quality control, Lean Six Sigma type of tools that we were doing for them. So yes, we were doing very well. At that time, in our team, we were probably 14, maybe 16 people working with us. Some of them were consultants, some of them were trainers, some other people were working in the office. All of them incredibly nice, very, very professional. I had some very young people at that age, and they were very professional, very nice. That's a time that I really miss, working with that team, that specific team, because it was the nicest thing in the world, was to have the honor to go and work with them every day, and basically learning. All of them were different, and learning as much as possible from all of them. So we were all over the state of Mexico doing training. What brought us to the US was that we had two very unfortunate events that involve people, thieves. I had one occasion when I went to the bank and we had a car following us, and we didn't know. And the moment that we stopped, two people came out of that car and they had guns. And in that particular one that I'm telling you, they made me kneel down to the ground, to the sidewalk, in front of the tire of my car. And I think I saw like 6 different people with their guns pointing right to my head, and actually getting their guns cut and prepared to shoot. So that was one of the 2 moments that I thought, that was it. This you always hear or see this on the TV, and it's happening right now to you. It's happening right now.
And so what went through your head at that moment?
It goes with all kinds of stuff that could happen. It's a little hard to think, because when they were doing that, they were pushing the tip of the gun against my head, and they are yelling and they are shouting. I didn't know at that time, but one of them, they were searching the car. They destroyed the inside of my car trying to find a bag with money. I don't know. These were very, very bad thieves, because they couldn't find anything. They did everything wrong, which was a very good thing. One of them, he made a couple of shots to the air. It's a very scary moment, because you don't know if you've just been shot and you don't feel it. Mm-hmm. And in your mind, you're going like, I need to start trying to see if I can feel my leg, my arm, or maybe I'm already gone and I haven't all these crazy stories that you hear, they all come to your mind. One of the things that I thought is, maybe I'm already gone and I just don't know it.
Wow.
And no, well, so when that thing ended, and I don't know, maybe it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. They told me to remain down on my knees, and they jumped to their car and they went away. And I remained there, and I was so scared to just stand up back again. So the people that started walking by, of course, some of them probably were just observing what was crazily happening in front of their eyes. Mm-hmm. They came to me and they held me by the arm, and they just brought me up, and they told me, it's okay, brother. It's over. It's gone. You're here. Take a deep breath. Take it easy. Relax. And that's how I came back. I looked in my car. It was all destroyed. It was very crazy. So I had 2 moments like that.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, do you think that your business and your success made you a target for this type of thing?
Yes. Here's what I know it happened. You are there speaking in front of 200 people in a conference, especially the conferences that were not private, in a private industry, the open conferences that everybody could just show up and get in, which I really liked doing that, speaking for people and bringing something new to them. It's something that I really enjoyed all the time. But you never know. You got 200 people there sitting in front of you, and you never know who's thinking in their head, okay, this guy, it's really pocketing in a lot of money, and they start having crazy thoughts about you, right? And it's impossible to know. I mean, it's just the fact that you have 200 people in front of you triggers people's minds. Some of them, they think, okay, so this is a ticket about so many pesos or so many dollars times this amount of people. They think you're bringing into you all that money, for example, which was not the case in any moment. So I became a very visual target. And I don't know if there's anything you can do against that, because you have to physically be there. You have to physically be presenting to people. Every time you're up there in the stage, you got to let them see you. And you can't control what they're thinking.
Yeah, there is definitely a price to having a public persona. A lot of people have seen it, myself included. At the end of the day, you know what, Joe? If someone is not after you, if someone doesn't dislike you, you are not putting yourself out there. You are not successful enough, because there are people who will dislike you just because people like you, or just because you're successful. And I think it's so important, like your story, you didn't let that get you down. You weren't fearful. You said, how can I protect myself the most? How can I keep being successful and keep growing, but still protect myself? And that is what brought you to the US, right?
That is what brought me to the US. And more than thinking, how can I protect myself? I always knew I could always get surrounded with 2 or 3 guys to take care of myself. But I was actually thinking, how can I protect my family? Because at that time, we were a very small family, but we were a growing family. I knew at some point we were going to be more. And my basic thought was, how could I protect them? Because I couldn't have everybody always with bodyguards and surrounded with people. And that was not appropriate to me to have to live that way. I knew I couldn't stop. It was totally impossible to just go back and then think, okay, I will then just do nothing. I'll go back to work in a private company. No, it never crossed my mind. I always wanted to keep moving ahead. I always wanted to keep evolving. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just that my fire was pointing to the other direction. And I knew it was going to happen. The growth was going to happen. So I just needed to be prepared for that growth. And part of being prepared was, how could I protect my family? So that is basically what triggered the immigration process to move from Mexico and to move the company from Mexico to the United States. Basically what we did is we did the whole company and the body of knowledge, the knowledge capital, and bring it to the US.
Mm-hmm. I love all of the words that you were using when talking about your own growth and being resilient and never stopping and, just continuing forward, because these are the things that I see you bringing to other people. You applied this to your life, you found success, and now you are sharing that on. And I love that. So let's talk about a little bit about your company. You brought your company here to the US, and tell us about what CE Leadership Group does.
What we do is professional growth. Some people see that as leadership training. Some people see that as management training. It's a combination, a little bit of both. It's not necessarily just purely leadership training, because not everybody wants to be a leader. Not everybody wants to be a manager, for example. But professional-wise, most people would like to be a better professional. So we do leadership training, we do management training, but mostly what we do is professional growth. We create programs to train people in companies or to train people in all kinds of organizations to have a much better professional performance, and therefore they can open new doors of opportunity for them and grow from there. There's something very interesting that I used to have in my mind as a when you have that little stone in your shoe and doesn't let you walk well, and this in my case it was that thought that everybody calls the corporate ladder, And the corporate ladder makes it sound like there's a ladder against the tree or against the wall, and all you have to do is just climb up that ladder and get yourself to the top. That always bugged me. That always bugged me because I never saw, and correct me if you've seen something like this, but I never saw any person moving straight from where they are up to that organization or that corporation in a straight line. That doesn't happen. The corporate ladder it's a myth, it's a lie. What I think it really is, it's a rock climbing wall. It looks more like a rock climbing wall. You know, when you have to hold yourself like this, and the next movement is not up. The next movement might be to this direction a little bit. And you got to stretch your leg over there, and you got to really hold with your fingers in your hands real tight, because there's no other way to hold yourself to the wall at that moment. And as soon as you are comfortable in that new position, you regain your strength and you start planning your next movement. And now you move a little bit to the other direction and then to the other direction. And sometimes we move horizontally rather than vertically. We go to the sides and we find a better path, a better way to grow. So instead of a corporate ladder, I tell my clients that it's more like a corporate rock climbing wall, which is a lot harder to climb.
I absolutely love that analogy. I don't think that that's just a corporate ladder. I think that that's life in general, right? We never know what's going to happen. And honestly, we don't know when someone's going to knock the ladder over or break it. And we're going to have to, build a whole new ladder from scratch. But no matter what it is, just the fact that you keep going and you keep moving, or that you keep going on that wall, you don't know which direction it is. I mean, I think that is such a great analogy. And that's another thing that I love about you, Joe, is you always have a great analogy for everything. That's something that sets you apart. But I want to also hear, what do you think sets your company apart from other training companies?
Thank you for the question. I think that a very nice strength that we have, what sets us apart, is I will not be the guy, or our trainers will not be the people standing in front of you telling you how things should be, telling people what type of leader they should be. That does not come from us. We are not the rock and roll stars of training. The spotlight is not on us. Any training that you go to, the spotlight has to be on the participants. So I grab the spotlight and I turn it to the participants, and basically I put together programs that will make them do three things. The first one is I'm looking for hindsight. I will put together questions for people to explore their previous experiences, to explore their past, so they can understand better what happened in any specific moment, what happened in a particular situation where they had something and they are not totally okay with the result of that. We all need to explore our past and assess it and evaluate it. So hindsight is the first step. And then we go to the next point, which is foresight. I try to push people's minds to the future and to analyze what could be the possibilities and the opportunities out there, and how they can see themselves in those opportunities to gain inspiration on that. Now, the third one comes when you have hindsight and you have foresight and you combine the two of them in your mind. That creates insight. Insight is what you learn, what you learn when you understand what happened and why things happened the way it happened. And when you understand the path you're going to, where you're moving to ahead in the future, and you create that crossing in your mind, you get to understand better where you are, where you want to go, and it brings up to you traits that you didn't know you had. It builds up in you awareness of how you want to conduct yourself in the future. Let's say tomorrow you have a very important meeting. You had all the technical information prepared, but guess what? You need to be aware of some more management or leadership traits that maybe are more important for you to show and perform that way than just the technical information. It's those traits and it's that awareness of what's going on, what I need to do and how do I need to get across to be perceived and be performing the right way. That is so much more important than just the technical information. And that awareness, that perception of the world is different. Every person, we all are different in the way how we perceive the world, in the way how we perceive our work, even our own boss or supervisor. If you and I had the same person as a supervisor, we could see a different person just because you and I come from different previous experiences. We would be seeing that as a different person. It could be more positive to you or more positive to me, but that previous experience has shaped how we see the world right now, and it will shape how prepared we are to face the world and move towards the goals.
Well, Joe, I want to bring up something about your company. I know a lot of people, when they hear about training, they think that you're coming with some prepackaged, here's the 10 things, everyone gets the same experience. That's not you at all. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, we call that training from the shelf. Yes, we can do training from the shelf. I just will go grab my binder and I'll change the name of the program so it fits your company. But I'm sure that is not going to help people. And that's the very reason why when you go to training and you get back to your office, nothing, absolutely nothing different happens. And the binder itself finds its own way back to the shelf. Why it doesn't work? Because it's not relevant and it doesn't connect to what actually is happening in real life. Training from the shelf, it's if people want to be people want to receive that type of training, it's a nice thing to have, but it's not transformational. That is only informational. That's just information. If you want to really be transformed, you want to change the perspective, how you see the world. The way to transform our insight is by transforming the way how we perceive the world, and that is different. Our minds have to be gently pushed to different directions to find those answers, because your answer will not be the same as my answer. That's what makes us different, and that's what we do different from regular training from the shelf. Yes, that's fine. We can do that. That actually is more affordable because there's really nothing more than we can do than just going back to the binders we already have. But if you're looking for that transformation, then you need to have something more dedicated to search for the answers in you, in your group of people, in your company, in your culture. The culture that you're having in your organization needs to be transformed. And that's mostly what we do. That's the key value that we provide, is that transformation that will be unique, person to person, place to place, and organization to organization.
So, Joe, tell me, you talk about leadership training. Do you think that leadership is natural, or do you think it's something that is learned and can be cultivated?
Wow, that's the question, the 2,000-year question. I think it's both. A lot of people, they get born, and from a very young age, they can have examples, they get exposed to examples of strong leadership. So in their mind, that's the way life is. And they don't see any other possibility, because that's how they were raised. And they have those examples. So those were kind of born leaders. But also you have people, and that would be the vast majority of us, people that once you gain some awareness that you need to improve, and this is key, that raising that awareness is the key. You need to improve something, you need to start studying and working on something, that becomes transformational. And people can become so much better leaders because you can make that transformation with direction. You actually have the steering wheel in your hands to provide direction to that transformation. And then you can take it to the direction that you want to go to. So if you really think about it, it's a little more complex, because the other one, it's more intuitive, and that sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. But when you're consciously and you are aware, working on that, you actually take it to the direction you want to go, and that becomes so much more stronger trait, so much better characteristic in yourself, And you will always be that person, positive person to work with, because that doesn't stay with you. That permeates to all directions. All the people that you touch along the way when you're working will feel that they are working with somebody whose awareness it's better, and they will want to work with you. Have you seen those type of people? When you enjoy working with somebody else, they will want to work with you because you are showing that thing unintentionally or intentionally, but you're aware of that thing. You're aware of the people around you, and you're being that positive to them.
Yes, that is exactly, and I see so much in you and working with you and just the energy that you bring, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on here. And I want to say for anyone in the comments, I get to talk to Joe all the time. I could ask him questions all day, but if you guys have any questions for Joe regarding leadership, regarding entrepreneurship, regarding government contracting, one thing that we haven't really had the opportunity to talk about is that CE Leadership Group does federal trainings.
Yes. Yes. One of the things, there was one occasion when people in the federal, some people that are employees in the federal government, they came to one of our trainings. They really liked it, and they asked us to develop specific programs for them. So we have done training, leadership training for now, I think it's for 18 or 19 different federal government agencies. And especially during this COVID-19 new reality, we actually tailored the training because everybody moved to a different office, but they still wanted to have access to the training that we had created for them. So we created an online program that actually increased the capacity for them to understand what they were doing and to understand how to improve and increase their performance, professional performance, in spite of the current situation. And we have done that for a number of federal agencies, government, local municipalities too. We have had the opportunity to work with organizations in other states across the country. So we have had that experience too.
So, Joe, one of the things that's really pushed today in these inspirational books, articles, social media, everyone wants to talk about leadership. It's kind of a hot button topic. But do you think that leadership is for everyone? And for those who don't want to be leaders, is that okay?
I think leadership could be for everyone. Anyone could become a great leader, but it's not necessarily that people becomes a leader. I think it's so very okay to not want to pursue that specific goal. Let me tell you why. That doesn't mean that the person will be less or is not performing okay or is doing something differently. No. When you go to work, you can be in charge of a group of people, but you could also be just working right there in your office. You don't have to supervise anybody, but you still have to go. You still have to go and talk to your boss in the upper office. You still have to go and talk to the teller in the bank. You still have to go and talk to the lady at the grocery store. And so we all have those human interactions, and we all concur in the sense that how we treat each other and how we make feel each other when we interact with each other. How's that energy flowing back and forth? That, to some degree, has a lot of the leadership ingredients in it. People does not have to be a leader because we already have that ingredient, that component in our life, and we are already doing some of those things in a natural way. So again, as long as we are aware, you go to the grocery store, you have a nice conversation with the lady that helped you put your groceries in the cart, for example, and you can always feel how you made that exchange positive. You're always leaving that person in a little better mood or more positive than it was before, he or she was before, and you too. Well, that's some kind of leadership. It's just not something that you have to grab with your hands and enforce it out to the group of people that you're supervising. So it's okay. Not everybody has to be a leader, and there's nothing wrong with that. Also, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a leader. There is not specific good or bad on those things. It's who we are and how we feel better doing that specific thing. And if you're doing something that you feel good at doing that, I'm sure you will want to repeat that experience, and that will continue to build up in you. A lot of people are informal leaders. They may not be aware of that. They may not know that they are being such a great leader in their community, for example, or such a great leader. Some of them, they get together Friday night to play music, all of them together. They might be great leaders there too. There might be other settings where people are being leaders and they are just not that aware formally that they are performing that.
Joe, there are so many great nuggets in this today. I think that even after knowing you for so long, I still learned some really interesting things, and I hope that everyone watching also learned a lot. Before we end, I want to know, are there any tips, tricks, anything that you want to share with us before we finish up?
Wow, that's a good question. And actually, I think you are providing the tip with what you just said. You actually provided the audience with the tip because you said you're learning a lot. I thank you for that. And one of the key things that I've seen, one of the key secrets is what you just said. It's not what I'm saying, but it's actually what you said. The importance is not so much in the teacher. It's not important how much the teacher knows or how experienced the teacher is. It will always be so much more important. How much do we want to learn? How much of our willpower we want to put to open our mind and receive new perspectives of the world, new ways of seeing things? And at the end, what is going to transform the way how we deal with others and we connect with others is that sense of learning. It's not the sense of teaching. Whoever, like I said before, whoever stands in front of you trying to teach you something may not be doing anything valuable, because the actual value is in the learning, not in the teaching. And the learning is different person to person. The learning happens if the person wants to learn, not if the other person wants to teach. So what you just said, yes, it's that sense of keeping our mind open to different possibilities, knowing that we are all so diverse and there's always something new to learn from any other person, no matter if they're older, younger, they work in a different place. There will always be something useful that we can learn from the other person if we just can take the time to talk, to interact, to speak with that person. We will always end up learning something from them and from everybody.
Well, thank you, Joe. We really appreciate you. For those of you who want to connect with Joe, there's some information down in the comments. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. You can check out his website. I'm sure if you put any questions in the comments, he'll be coming back and answering later. And then you can also connect with him on Facebook. Thank you for coming, Joe.
Thanks to you. Thank you to the audience too. Thanks to you very much. Thanks to the chamber. Thanks to the team. You're leading a great team. You're doing a great job. I really like it a lot. And thanks to everybody for attending this meeting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys all for tuning in. I know some of you have been here week after week, which we really appreciate. If you have any suggestions for speakers, please feel free to reach out to me. You can send it to chamber@pmahcc.org. Next week, we're going to be speaking with Aurelia Dominic. She's the Chief Medical Officer for organizations at Highmark. She is also a board member for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And she's just a great and really intelligent woman she's very charismatic, and she's a really good friend. The Latino Pittsburgh Digital Speaker Series is an initiative of the Pittsburgh Metropolitan Area Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Our goals are to share relevant information, inspire growth, and foster opportunity. Our speakers include community leaders and members, as well as other individuals who have had a positive impact on not just the Hispanic community, but the whole Pittsburgh community at large. So if you guys want to learn more about the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, feel free to visit www.pmahcc.org. We'll see you next Tuesday at 12 p.m. And please don't forget to subscribe so that you get a little notification every time we go live. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.